All right. Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us. We're here with Jordan Damer. Jordan works for Congressman Kevin McCarthy, who is also the House Minority Leader. And she's joining us for a new series we're doing for Pacific Research Institute on young leaders, for our Young Leaders Circle. So we're a crazy concept. We're talking to young professionals and folks that we think eventually would be young leaders. So Jordan, thanks for being here today.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, let's start out. How did you get into politics? You're in Congress now. You're in school out west in California. Did you always want to work in politics? How did you kind of get your start?
Sure. So when I started college, I actually planned on going to medical school and becoming a physician. Okay. And I took clearly a very different route.
A little different.
A little different, yeah. So I was taking all the traditional pre-medical courses, and I actually was recruited to join the Model UN program at my school by a friend that was involved and knew I was kind of interested. And so they persuaded me. I joined the program, and the program was filled by a lot of political science majors. And I just fell in love with that program and had the opportunity to speak with all of those students about what they were discussing in their courses, and ended up changing my major to political science. Okay. So from there, I continued in with that program, got involved with some other organizations on campus, and learned about an internship that landed me in Washington, D.C. And
are you allowed to say the name of it?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Okay. So I was an intern with the Panetta Institute for Public Policy, which is a phenomenal organization. And so they're a nonprofit, nonpartisan. And so they have a couple of different programs. And one of them is a congressional internship, where they take one student from each CSU and a couple of private schools in California. And they kind of match you with a congressional office. And then you go and you intern in Washington, D.C. for a couple of months. And so through that program, which was founded by Secretary Leon Panetta, and he and his wife, Sylvia, the CEO, they run it together. They take you up to Monterey, where the Institute is located. And from there, like I said, they ship you off to Washington, D.C. for a couple of months. And so at that point, I was matched with Leader McCarthy's office. So I interned there for about 2.5 months. And then they were kind enough to offer me a job following the internship. And that's where I'm working today.
So it sounds like the Panetta Institute, and that's how we actually got connected
yes.
through a contact there, but it's basically a crash course in public policy, more or less.
Absolutely.
And then some.
And then some, yes. So comprehensive. You go to the Institute for 2 weeks, which is, like I said, located in Monterey Bay, and you're there and you have the opportunity to hear kind of lecture styles almost from so many different people that are involved with government at many different levels. So local level in Monterey County, state level, California, and then they even have federal officials. You have the opportunity to speak with Secretary Panetta and hear about his firsthand experiences all throughout the government. And it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that program changed my life and the lives of probably the majority of the students that go through that program.
No, that's great. I think, I did political science in school as well, and was in a different state, but I think you're learning about those programs, hearing about them. There's a few, and I think if you're not in it, you did Model UN, which it's funny, it ties into another guest we'll have later on in this series. I know she did Model UN and was very involved. So it seems like there's some similar pathways that get you either into politics or at least curb your interest in it.
Oh yeah. So I think one of the things that always interests me, at least for the very short amount of time I've been in DC anyways, is that no one has the exact same path to working in Congress or anywhere in DC for that matter. And, it's just fascinating learning about how many people have such niche interests in their element in Washington, D.C. and how they got involved. But yeah, I would say the Model UN program was influential in my experience, because that is really what changed my career trajectory. And then I think my time at the Institute and everything that I was exposed to there, that allowed me to fine tune it a little bit more.
Well, let's go into that. Your transition, so you finished school, you were hired on by the congressman's office, and then I assume it was around the time COVID was happening. Can you kind of take us through maybe, I don't know if it coincided exactly, but your first month, and then when COVID hit, what was it like?
Sure. So I actually started in Leader McCarthy's office back in January of this year, so January 2020, and I was in school full time, but I was fully online. So when the pandemic began and we kind of transitioned into that, and all the students transitioned into online learning, that was actually a really smooth transition for me because I was already fully online.
Sure.
And so that was more of a challenge in the workplace than like education for me, because at that point, my role in the office was really to make sure everyone was set up to begin teleworking, which is something we've never had a protocol for. There's nothing to look back on and say, oh, we can just do it this way, recreate what they did 5 years ago. Yeah. There's nothing like that. So for school, that was pretty straightforward. Online classes, traditional senior thesis, stuff like that. And then work was definitely more of the difficult, challenging thing in that time frame.
Well, I think definitely, and I worked in the state legislature, but government prides itself on not remote working and not teleworking before all this. So I mentioned there weren't any protocols or any programs.
No protocols. And it was absolutely everything you had to figure out. So first of all, not even everyone had a device to work from home. So you had to make sure everyone had that. And then, that's complex in and of itself. And then figuring out a schedule, how to transition, in our office alone, it's not uncommon for us to host 10 up to 15, 20 meetings a week in person, and transitioning all of that to online conference calls, Zoom. We weren't even aware of really what Zoom was a year ago. And so
was.
No, but very familiar with it now. So it's I've definitely had a lot of unique learning opportunities that have been, I think, really exciting.
That's good.
Given the heavy circumstances.
Yeah, no, that's probably how any good job started. You have the distinction though of probably going into a congressional staff role during a pandemic, more or less. That's a notch in your resume for sure.
Yeah, certainly a good interview question, or interview answer rather, one day.
Well, let's talk about what you do. I want to ask what a normal day is like. We talked before, and I'm sure there is no normal day. But what do you do in the office? What are some basic roles that you have?
Sure. So as a staff assistant in our office, my job is quite literally to assist the staff. And so that takes on a lot of different forms, a lot of different roles. And so a normal day in Congress, I really, barring global pandemics, there really isn't a normal day in Congress. It changes so much. But as you know, Congress their time is split kind of in between being in session and being in recess. So we're in session. Members are there, legislative business is being conducted. It's kind of making sure that the member I work for, Leader McCarthy, as well as our whole staff, is situated. They have everything they have going on. So that means managing conference rooms. Now that means conference calls. It means making sure the office is supplied with everything it needs so that the staffers can do what it needs. I work a lot with interns, which has been really fun. That's been a very rewarding part of this job for me personally. And
how many interns do you guys usually have?
In a typical summer, we have about 20.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Right. Yeah. And so that's an adventure figuring out where to just put them in the office, let alone what work to give them.
Yeah.
But right now, I think going into fall, I think we're going to have about 6 interns. And so they're always rotating, their school schedules are different. So that's fun navigating all of that too. But anyway, so normal day in Congress, it's kind of just responding to the daily needs of the office. A lot of the meetings we have are catered, so it's coordinating that. The role of a staff assistant is a lot of administrative work. So anything that falls under that category, when we're in recess, it's a lot of the same work. It's just a little bit more relaxed. You don't see as many members running around the halls. Something that I think is unique about my role is that I work specifically in Leader McCarthy's leadership office, which is a little bit different than the regular traditional member offices. And so my role as a staff assistant differs from that of a traditional staff assistant as well. Traditional staff assistants, they do a lot of tour coordinating. They manage, if anyone from the district's constituents are requesting flags to be flown over the Capitol, they coordinate that. We do have a member office as well as our leadership office, and so the staff assistant over there handles a lot of that work. When the Capitol is open, I do have the opportunity to give tours, which is really, really fun. I really enjoy that. And so that we kind of split with interns as well.
Okay. What's maybe one unexpected thing, I guess, don't say COVID. You can't have that in. What was one unexpected thing when you took the job, when you came in, that you started doing or you did that surprised you?
I would say I didn't realize how there's a lot of bureaucracy, of course, involved, and how deep that goes into every different thing. So you have all the different elements of, like the finances of the office, billing, vouchers and stuff like that, as well as how much we support as a staff assistant, the comms team, the policy team, member services. I didn't realize quite how complex each office is in Congress. And so when you're here interning, you're exposed to a little bit of it, but I don't think you realize quite how involved everything is. So diving in past surface level has been quite interesting and really eye-opening for me.
The bureaucracy of the bureaucracy.
Yeah, that's the perfect way to put it. The bureaucracy of the bureaucracy. I like that.
So you talked about Model UN, Panetta Institute, and now you're working in Congress. Is there someone that you look to as a mentor, that you had as a mentor that, pushed you to get involved, whether it was your friend with Model UN or someone else that you're like, gosh, this is like the path and this is a person I can lean on to help me?
I think, while I was still at school, at least physically at school, I had one professor. He was actually the Model UN advisor that I had a really close relationship with. I was the head delegate for the Model UN program for about 1.5 years there, so I worked really closely with him. Political science professor. His focus is international relations, which makes sense. And so I worked a lot with him. He was kind of like a mentor. He was certainly a mentor to me. And then I think as I've moved to the East Coast and now I'm in a completely different environment, I think I relied quite heavily on the fellow Panetta interns while I was here. So that was a cohort of about 23 students, including myself. And, we were all interning in different congressional offices, but congressional offices nonetheless, right? So we had similar experiences. A lot of emotional bonding happened, the stress of walking into an office and having high expectations of yourself, realizing that you're representing not only your school, but the Panetta Institute and that reputation that, you were chosen. It's a privilege to be able to uphold that. And so I think that those groups really built my confidence in DC and thinking that, hey, I might know what I'm doing here. And so, but besides that, I think I work for work with a great team that I think everyone in my office in particular, I think really values mentorship. And it's just, I think it's a great place to work. I'm so spoiled, so lucky. And so I'd say now my staff, I guess.
Well, that's good. I mean, that's a good transition. I think, for some people, it could be one or two people their whole life. And other folks, it just might be situational and where they're at, where they're working and who's around. But I kind of have we can get into maybe, kind of some things you've learned and advice you'd pass on. I mean, I liked your story because right at the beginning, you were like, you had nothing to do with politics. You were going to be a doctor or you're going to be in the medical field. And then you did I'd say more than a 180 and changed. And I think some people, and I've come across this, is there's this kind of mystery around like political science and going into politics.
Yeah, what do you do with a political science degree? Well,
exactly. And I mean, what's kind of advice if someone is curious, and it doesn't even have to be college, if they're still interested in a career, or maybe they want to work on a campaign or work with a member's office in any level. I mean, what's some advice you would tell them?
Well, I think there are two pieces of advice I have. If you're interested in working in Congress, if you're interested in policy, any field, if you can, intern on the Hill. Find a member's office that you have a connection with. If it's the member that represents your district, if it's just from the state you're from, anything. Intern on the Hill. It's a terrific experience. And that's really how I think most people find their connections, at least from in the beginning, and their network, expanding their network. I think the second bit of advice, and this is something I learned as an intern, is that working in Congress isn't just policy. It's not just drafting legislation. There is a whole element of communications, member services. I don't think I realized at the time that each committee has its own staff. It has a staff for both sides, so both parties, right? There are so many different things you can do on the Hill. If you have any interest in Congress at all, if you have any interest in being a public servant, especially at the federal level, it's a terrific, terrific job to have. It's not without its challenges and stress, for sure, but you're going to find that anywhere. And I think that if you have any interest in serving, the public, just do your research. Don't be afraid to go and intern somewhere, even if it's after college. Go intern, talk to people, ask chiefs of staff if they want to go get coffee. They are more than happy to spend 15 minutes with you just answering your questions or sharing their own story. Because like we talked about earlier, everyone has a different path to their career, the job that they have. And I think that you learn a lot from listening to others, especially here in DC.
Yeah, and I would echo that. I've come across so many people that they actually came in, they're really like true public policy folks, that they just had one issue that they loved to death. And that's actually how they kind of stumbled backwards into a political, like a staffer career, because they just by osmosis became an expert on an issue, or they were the kind of the go-to person on an issue. And I think that happens, and a lot of folks, and I'm sure you've seen this there's a whole constituent services side as well. There's helping folks in the district with really anything related to government or business. It really runs the gamut. And I remember working, some of the best phone calls I had were helping people. And it's as little as like from the DMV to folks who needed help with the water district.
Absolutely.
It's kind of what really, I think some people, when they hear politics, they think, the campaign side, and really so much more of it is probably constituents. Yes, exactly. So much more is constituents, and really helping folks in the district with the day-to-day when it intersects with government or public service.
Right. I think so. That's actually a great point, because not everyone's able to come to Washington, D.C., uproot their life and intern for 3 months. That's a huge commitment. That's a huge undertaking. And so for people who can't do that, a terrific other option is interning for your district office. And so each member of Congress has at least one district office, if not multiple. And so that's where they do a lot of the work that you just talked about, constituent services, field reps, all of that stuff. And those are the people that solve the day-to-day issues. And then that gets passed along to the member in DC when they're in DC anyways, because, their time is split between district and DC. And so that's a big piece of the puzzle, I think, anyways, when members are learning about what legislation is necessary, what problems are our constituents facing, and how can we solve that at this level, and then also at the local level back in the district. So I think there's really no wrong way to go about it. Just get involved wherever you can, whatever you have time for, and ask as many questions as you can, listen as much as you can along the way. That's what I would recommend.
No, that all sounds great. And that might be good. I was going to turn over you for a close, but that might have been it.
Well, that works.
You can keep going.
Oh, please, no, I won't stop. I think that was good.
All right. Well, hey, thank you for joining us. I look forward. You're our inaugural guest on this this new series we're doing. So
exciting.
I look forward. You know, I'm always such a big fan of having folks back like a year later, and just,
I would love to do that.
Coming back again and seeing what they're doing. So I would look forward to that. And thank you for joining us today.
Of course. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Take care.
Take care. Bye.